You're now listening to Sound Talent Media. Check out more shows at soundtalentmedia.com.
Hey, what's up, everyone? I'm Matt Migaki, the vocalist of Cryptopsy and the host of the Vox and Hops Metal Podcast, where I sit down with fellow metal musicians. We talk all about their lives and music while sharing killer craft beers. If you've ever wanted to sneak backstage and share a beer with one of your favorite musicians, well, Vox and Hops is the podcast for you. This week on the podcast, I dropped a killer episode with Johannes Ekström of Avatar. There is this episode and over 440 other ones to help you enjoy life, metal, and craft beer. So what are you waiting for? It's time to become a Vox and Hops head. Cheers!
It's not like in-depth, hard-hitting Barbara Walters type stuff.
Right. It's more like Fresh Air with Terry Gross.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's episode of the ToneMob.com podcast, the show about guitar tone and the people behind it. As you know, I'm your host, Blake Weiland, and with me today I have Ben Juday of Analog Outfitters. How are you doing, sir?
Oh, I'm doing just fine. Thank you. How about yourself?
I feel like I'm just going a million miles an hour sometimes, and it's like, but I didn't go anywhere.
Yeah, I know the feeling. Sometimes I think I walk like a mile and a half in our little shop factory a day, all within the same, couple thousand square feet.
Right, exactly. But, where are you guys located at?
So we are in downtown Champaign, Illinois. Champaign is where the University of Illinois is, sort of about 2 hours south-ish of Chicago.
Gotcha. Cool. Very cool. Well, before we get into like your musical backstory and all that, why don't you kind of tell the listeners a little bit about your company, the products you have, just in case they're not familiar. I'm sure a lot of them will be, but you can kind of give an overview about what it is that you guys do.
Yeah, great. So Analog Outfitters, we've been a company since about 2002. Until about 2011, we didn't do any manufacturing. We were strictly a repair center for, your guitar amp doesn't work, you bring it to us, we fix it. And we were a live sound company too, so we were, fully immersed in the music world, but not as fabricators. And but that was actually a really, really good move for us, because when you fix thousands of pieces of gear, everything from mixing consoles to, guitar amplifiers, you really learn about the things that you should do as a fabricator and the things that you shouldn't do. And you also learn about what always breaks, because it was the same things we were repairing over and over. And, what sort of designs, really stand up to the rigors of touring or even just, playing around town. So that was quite an education. And then in 2011, sort of on a whim, just for fun, we also repair Hammond organs, and I had just hundreds of Hammond organ amplifiers and parts around the shop. So I just decided one day to take a Hammond organ amp and modify it for a guitar, and really had no plan on becoming an amp company at all. It just sort of, I made it, and I fired it up, and it was like, wow, that sounds really good. I better finish this up. So I was like, I need a case and a faceplate. So I looked around my shop and I found this old sort of random metal aluminum case that was from old scientific equipment, and the amp fit in there perfectly. And then I looked around for a faceplate, and above my office door I had a little 1950s tin sign that said ladies restroom, and I grabbed that and I put it in the box, and it fit perfectly. Like, everything just fit perfectly. And I thought, geez, I guess I better, maybe I should make another one. So I made that first one, and then I made a second one, and one of our repair customers, played it and bought it. And I was like, all right, well, maybe I'll make another one. And this was the amp that we still make, called the Sarge. And so then basically, after that, my wife is from near Nashville, and we go down there quite a bit. So I thought, I'll take one of these amps down there, and I'll see if I'll just see if anybody's interested in it. I'll take it to a few music stores,
Right.
and well, that turned out to be I was extremely naive, which is actually good because I didn't know what I was getting into as far as how competitive it is. So I just called up, and I was like, "Hey, my name's Ben. I'd love to bring an amp over." And I called three or four places, and two said no. One pretty much said, "Hell no, you can't bring it in. And if you do bring it in, we won't talk to you." And then one place said, "Yeah, you can bring it in." And I think there was four places. And then the third one said, "You can bring it in, but I doubt I'll have time to take a look at it."
Right.
So it wasn't a very warm response, but luckily it looked unique enough that when I did bring it in, it sort of caught their attention. They're like, "Well, maybe, maybe we'll try it out." And both dealers, wanted to become, wanted to place an order and become real dealers. And
Mm-hmm.
of course, though I hadn't made any others, that was the only other one I had was what I brought them, And
Right.
so of course I didn't let on to that. I'm like, "Oh yeah, no problem. We'll get right on that. It'll probably take us 2 weeks. We're a little back ordered right now." Which back ordered meaning I have parts to order or
Right.
whatever. So that was how we got our start. Very sort of, it's not like I had a business plan and a whole, marketing plan mapped out to become an amp company. It really just sort of, I just sort of stumbled into it. And then once I was in it, then I got really serious about it as far as making sure we had the best possible amps that we could build. But, sort of stumbled into the business, I guess, a little.
Right. Right. So, I'm obviously not making too big of an assumption here that you play guitar. I'm assuming.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Well,
where does where did you start playing guitar, and then how did it kind of lead you into the initial repair business?
Well, that's a good question. It's sort of funny. I didn't start playing guitar until I was about 18 or 19, and then I really sort of dove into it voraciously, and just all my free time went to playing guitar and bass, and I just became absolutely fascinated with playing music, and growing up, I always liked to, try to fix things. And I was always, my dad had a workshop and we were always out there building stuff. And I had an old go-kart that I was always working on. And so, I developed an interest in fixing things. And so after, maybe 5, 6 years of playing guitar, I started to become a little curious about how the gear worked. And so I started, taking things apart and peeking around and seeing this was in the days before YouTube. And so I really didn't have a good way other than just books um, to try to learn about, how tube amplifiers worked.
Mm-hmm.
And it's basically the the real change for me was when I was about 26. I was a graduate student here at the University of Illinois um, in geography. I wanted to be a geography professor, and I decided for fun to take this class called the Physics of Music and Musical Instruments.
Mm-hmm.
And I just asked the professor if I could sit in. I didn't want to take it for credit. And the class was all about how vacuum tubes work and speakers and microphones and guitar pickups. And it was like finally that outlet for me to really learn. And I just poured myself into that just wholeheartedly,
Mm-hmm.
And so I became great friends with the professor, who still is a good friend of mine, and just a complete, electronics genius. And so he sort of took me under his wing and really trained me about everything. Pretty much everything I know comes from this guy.
Mm-hmm.
And so he trained me on vacuum tubes and transistors and everything and how to repair stuff. And so I opened a little repair business right after I finished my master's degree. Decided I'd mess around with that for a while before, you know, deciding if I was going to, finish up the PhD. ended up having too much fun as a repair guy and never completed a another degree. So this was 15 years ago. So for better or worse, I'm not a college professor. I went the other route, and so but this professor, Steve Aretti is his name. He really was instrumental in not only in my training, but to this day he helps out with all of our designs. So I'll get something so far, to a certain distance, and I'll have a problem I can't figure out, you know, and he'll come and help me. He's like, well, let's try this kind of circuit or that, or let's try doing this or that, and so really couldn't have done it without him and his generosity as a teacher and a friend.
Yeah, that's got to be like crazily helpful to have a resource like that, when you're trying to do what you're doing. Just like that's super valuable. A lot of people don't have that, so that's super fortunate.
Well, and this guy, his day job, as a physics professor, he was part of uh, the CERN. That's a particle accelerator in Switzerland, and he
Right.
was part of the
Yes.
team that discovered the Higgs boson. So this guy is, you can't get much smarter than this guy. So not only, I had more than a mentor. I had my own like private genius to tutor me along. And so like I said, it could never have happened um, without his help. And he's a big part of our of any success we have. We definitely give him a huge part of the credit.
That's fantastic. That's really cool.
Yeah.
So when I first heard about you guys, probably I'm guessing it was a couple of years ago, maybe a year ago. I'm not exactly sure on the time frame, but PGS did some promo stuff for you guys, and that's where I first kind of became aware. Um, and at the time, it was billed as like everything is kind of recycled, repurposed type of things. Is that still very much a core of what you're doing?
That's a really good question, and we get that a lot. People say, "Well, when are you going to run out of parts?" And so basically, the reason that we use Hammond organ as our raw materials is that for many years, well, we still are a Hammond organ repair shop, and we go out on
Mm-hmm.
service calls and we rebuild Hammond B3s. But during that time of all those years of doing that, 15 years, I just would come across hundreds and hundreds of organs where people would be like, "Oh, you want this?" And I'd say no, and they're like, "All right, well, we're just going to throw it in the dumpster." Like I'd come there to fix their B3, and they'd have three other organs there, that they're getting ready to pitch. And so all these years, I'm like, man, I just got to find something to do with all these raw materials. They're
Mm-hmm.
throwing away all this beautiful wood and these amplifiers. So, and because we were a repair shop, we had literally hundreds of amps and the wood from the cases and all this stuff. So basically, that's still a part of what we do. To an there's we've had to make some compromises. Um, for example, some of our chassis, we are having new chassis made. We have a lot more transformers than we do some of the original Hammond chassis. So
Right.
we have chassis made by a machine shop, but we still use the vintage transformers. So that would be one change we've made. With our speaker cabinets, we still use wood from the old Hammond organs and Baldwin and Wurlitzer organs, anything that's good solid wood. Um, and but we used to only use vintage speakers. Well, I couldn't get enough good vintage speakers, so we had to go to new speakers. So there's little compromises we've made here and there, or it's just inevitable. You can only find so many parts. But I should mention just really quickly, we are not damaging or destroying any organs that have sort of commercial value. So we're not tearing apart B3s or anything like that. These are organs that you see on Craigslist. Um,
Right. Right.
and but part of why we do it is because it's just a way for us to sort of save these marvelous instruments. And granted, they're getting turned into something different. They're not an organ anymore, but they're still a musical instrument. And so that's, I'm a kind of a big environmentalist, so that part is important to me. Seeing how we can take something discarded by society and turn it into what we like to think of as a truly world class piece of equipment. But
Mm-hmm.
while being creative about our materials.
Right.
So, we people sometimes wonder, like, when are you going to run out of these parts? And the fact of the matter is there's tens of thousands of these old organs out there, and we have, if you saw our warehouse and our factory, we have hundreds and hundreds of them. It's just ridiculous. But,
Right.
the quality of the wood, we're talking half of our stuff is made using redwood. You can't even buy redwood anymore, from
Right.
California redwood trees. And this is all wood that would otherwise have been pitched. We have mahogany and walnut and maple, all this beautiful wood. The transformers that we use in our amps, particularly the output transformers, they just have this magical sound, kind of like a vintage guitar pickup, that it just has this extra sparkle to it. So it's kind of using these materials make our products better than if we were using brand new materials, and they also make it more interesting for us because we're able to repurpose and recycle all these old materials.
For sure. For sure. Are there particular models or that you look out for with each of the brand? Like you see one and like, ooh, that one has a great transformer, or that one has a really nice,
Sure.
wooden, not cabinet, but
Yeah.
whatever
No.
they're
Well.
calling it.
Yeah. Actually, there are any of the old organs, Wurlitzer or Baldwin, any of them that have tube amps in, we'll buy those,
Mm-hmm.
because if they had a tube amp in it, 9 times out of 10, the wood they used was really good as well. It wasn't particle board or chip board or it was solid wood.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so the but we're pretty flexible. Pretty much any Hammond organ that has a tube amp will take. Some of them will have more usable parts than others. The M3 is a really good one, and they made just so many of those. So the M3 is a good one, probably our favorite, because it's got some just beautiful wood, and the amp we use when we make our road amp, we use that amplifier.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, really anything with tubes will take it, and we've built up quite a supply. Like we could keep producing amps for quite a while with just the inventory we have here.
Right.
So
Right. Um, are there any solid state ones that have parts that are usable for what you do? And I kind of asked this sort of for myself because I was in that same situation where I got a free organ that someone had sitting on the side of the road. I think it was a Wurlitzer, but it was a solid state one. Maybe it wasn't Wurlitzer. I can't recall exactly what brand it was, but
mhm.
it was a solid state one. And then, after I didn't play it for a while, I was like, well, I kind of went to, the same thing happened with it. I was like, who wants it? And somebody came and got it. So, uh,
Yeah.
uh,
Well, the
are there
solid
solid
state
state ones?
ones,
Yeah.
not really. The Now I will tell you, there's a few out there that are that are so wacky, and so cheesy that they're just awesome.
Right.
Like Hammond, we call them the carnival organs. I don't even know why, but usually because they have all these bright switches and like multicolored little knobs and buttons, and it just looks like something that would be at a carnival.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but anyways, Wurlitzer made one, and I think it was called the Fun Maker or the Fun Machine. I can't remember exactly, but it was a solid state organ, 2 manual. But then at the top, it had a little analog synth, like a true little analog synth that you could get the craziest noises out of, and
Oh,
it was
wow.
just sort of magical. And we always would laugh because we would say, so here's grandma playing her like little Lawrence Welk tunes or whatever, her little show tunes. And then she, decides to get crazy and, and play on the little mini third keyboard and just, you can get the wackiest tripped out sounds. And we're like, what were they thinking when they made this thing? So that's kind of, you know, that organ would just be worth keeping it as it is. I think it was they called the Fun Maker. I can't remember. But really the solid state ones, when they went to that, they usually started going to chipboard. They'll have chipboard with a veneer over it, and so the
Right.
second you cut it, it just it just sort of falls apart, and there's really not much in the solid state ones, unless you're just going for some cool, crazy tones, like the Hammond made one called the Aurora Classic or the Colonnade, a perfect carnival organ. And the drum machine, the cheesy drum machine, and all the cheesy sounds. I mean, they're actually kind of fun, but not as like a real tone machine, but really just as sort of a goof around.
Right. Yeah, that's
thing.
what this one was. It would just have these terrible drum sounds, like
Yeah.
and it actually did have some cool, like cool organ sounds in it. It was just like I got it thought I would just use it all the time, and it just kind of sat there. And so it was like,
Yeah.
Well, I guess somebody else can have it sit there. But yeah. Anyway, yeah, back to your amps and stuff. You have a particular product
Captain.
that I am super
Breaking up.
into. Oh, sorry. Can you hear me now?
Try it again.
Yeah, can you hear me?
A little better, yeah.
Okay, I'm not sure. I can hear you fine.
I didn't hear anything that you can hear me okay.
Yeah.
So back up like 30 seconds.
Okay. Yeah, well, getting back to your products, you have a particular one that I really enjoyed, and I really had fun playing it at NAMM, and that's the scanner. And why don't you tell people a little bit about that one?
I'm still having trouble hearing you here. I haven't moved. I don't know if it's what's going on here.
I'm not sure what's going on. I have good connection on my side, and I can hear you okay. Well, that's unfortunate. Is it still breaking up pretty bad?
Well, it was just when you were talking that it started breaking up.
Oh, good. Just when you needed to hear what I was saying.
Okay, now I can hear you fine.
Okay. I don't really know what's going on. I'm in the same spot where I normally am.
Maybe there's sunspots or something.
That could be. It could be something weird like that, but
yeah.
I'll back up. I can edit that together. So
sure.
Anyway, getting back to like your products and some of the stuff you guys make, there's one in particular that I was really excited about and had a lot of fun playing at NAMM, and that is the scanner.
Yes.
Why don't you kind of give people a rundown of what that thing has going on?
Well, that was the scanner was something that I had sort of had in the back of my mind for probably 10 years, because as working on a Hammond organ, you kind of become pretty familiar with all different parts of it, and the one part that was always the most amazing to me was this part called the vibrato scanner. And what it is it's the device that was invented by Hammond in the 30s, by Lawrence Hammond, as a way to get a true vibrato sound from his organ. And so that would be with an actual pitch shifting effect to it, so that it would be like a Leslie speaker. When it's spinning the rotors around, there is a pitch effect to that, because it's kind of like the Doppler effect, as it goes away from you and then comes back towards you. When it's going away, the sound waves are sort of in effect lengthened, and when it's coming towards you, in a sense they're shortened. So it has a pitch variability to it, and
right.
And so that was he had figured out this way of doing that for the organ. And so, and it's the most Rube Goldberg contraption that you have ever seen. It's unbelievable to think that anybody could have invented this. It's basically, try to think of an easy way to explain it. It's got 16 of these capacitive plates, and it has like an armature that spins around, and it spins another set of plates in between the stationary plates. And uh, without a picture, it's so hard to explain. But
Yeah.
essentially you take the in the organ, the sound would go into first a delay line, and what that did was that it was an inductive, uh, in a series of 16 inductors and resistors, and capacitors, that phase shifted, the original sound. It made 16 copies of the signal, each one slightly phase shifted.
Oh,
And so
gotcha.
then
Okay.
you'd pick 9 of those, um, and you would apply them then to these nodes on the scanner. Gosh, this is just going to make no sense to the listeners without a picture, but just think of it as you're getting a pitch shift from this delay line, and then you're applying those shifted signals, to some stationary points on the scanner, and then when the armature spins around, it picks up capacitively the tone, that's present on each of the different, capacitive plates. And the effect, I guess maybe that's the most important thing. What the effect is the most beautiful vibrato you've ever heard. And so I'd been working on these and seeing them forever, and I always thought, man, it would be so cool to try to modify that for guitar. And so it took me a year, like literally about a year, and we finally got it to work. There were so many hurdles to overcome. It wasn't even funny. Like the first thing that we decided we had to do was allow you to vary the speed of the motor that
Oh, right.
spins this armature, because with the Hammond organ it was just a one-speed vibrato, and that they just had to do it that way because it was connected to the tone generator. So in any event, they had a one-speed motor, and you could kind of vary the tone of the vibrato, but not the speed. So in order to do that, and I wanted to use an expression pedal, or as I call it, a gas pedal, to speed that motor up and down, which would then give you like a Leslie effect, right? Of it speeding up and slowing down. So it would be like whoa, 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 whoa,
Mm-hmm.
whoa, like that. And I really wanted to be able to do that. And that was incredibly difficult, because you can't do that with just any old kind of motor. And let's just say that was probably one of the biggest hurdles, was just finding the right sort of motor and motor assembly that could do that. Then we had all these other problems of making sure that it didn't have a bunch of noise, and then we also needed to have switching. So we decided to put spring reverb in there, so you could either, bypass the both effects, or you could press a foot switch button and engage the reverb, or then press another switch on a foot pedal, engage the vibrato. You could just have any combination of vibrato and reverb, or just vibrato, or just reverb, or none of them. That kind of switching was very difficult, to do, without, um, having noise or audible clicks, or there's a lot of routing of signals, different places to make that work. It was very, very, very difficult, but um, we got it finally. And there was probably 3 or 4 times when I was sure that I'd encountered a problem that I just couldn't solve, and that the project was dead. I was like, yeah, I don't think we can solve that. And then somehow, we would figure it out. And so, when we
Right.
finally really, brought it to our first NAM, it was just the original prototype, our first working prototype, and we didn't have any others. Um, and all of a sudden we got all these orders for them. We were like, oh boy, now we got to figure out how to make these darn things, and mass produce them. Not just, it was literally wired up on breadboards, like all the chips and stuff. We hadn't
Oh,
had circuit
wow.
boards, because part of what you do at NAM is it's like a testing bed, in the sense that you bring a product there, and you can gauge, do people give a darn about it. So before
Mm-hmm.
you go and you make hundreds of these things, maybe see if you can get some orders from dealers, and do people like it? We thought it was cool, but we didn't really know if anybody else really would. And so that first NAMM that we took it to was our sort of test, and we got great response. So then we moved forward and got the circuit boards designed and built, and figured out the rest of our little production issues, and got 100 chassis made. Ordered all the parts, and it didn't take long. We went through those first 100 in about it was several months, 6 or 7 months or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Which for a boutique product, that we were thrilled,
Of
because
course.
they're not cheap, and they're not easy to make. They're very labor intensive, and um, so we've ordered more boards and chassis, and we've well on our way to the next batch. Um, so it's been a really remarkable product. We enclose the whole thing in plexiglass, so you can see all the spinning parts and stuff, and
Mm-hmm.
that's really key too, because it's such a beautiful um, piece of engineering that the Hammond Organ Company did, that I really wanted to showcase that. And
Oh, for
so
sure.
it wouldn't have been nearly as cool if it had been just in a wooden box. So
Right, right. Yeah, definitely. That was part of the draw. I was walking by. I'm like, oh yeah, I remember these guys' stuff, and looking around at your amps and stuff, and I was like, what is that?
yeah.
And how do I get my hands on it? Let me play that right now. Um,
Well, it's so funny. People walk by our booth at NAMM, and it's always it's funny. People absolutely love it, or they hate it. There's really not much in between. It's all or nothing. And
I don't
luckily,
understand the hate. That doesn't make any
well,
sense to me at all.
there's usually not a lot of it. It's just too weird for some people. But it's kind of like um, there's really it's not something that people are generally just sort of like, eh. It's just love it or hate it, for better or worse. And so
Mm-hmm.
people would often walk up to our booth and see all this stuff that we make, and they'd be like, "What am I looking at?" Like,
Right.
literally, like, what am I looking at? And we'd go through our little spiel, and and it's just sort of funny, the reactions you get from people. But it's also very inspiring too, when you work so hard and you make these products, and then you go to NAMM, and there's people from all over the world there, and if they like your stuff, it's just like, wow, I guess all these late nights, and all this stress and all this hard work, it makes it all feel worthwhile. So the NAM has really been key for us. It's so expensive. It's like $10,000 for us to go
Right. I mean,
to the
pretty
one in
much any
Los
way you
Angeles.
slice it, right? Like, there's not a way to do it for cheaper than that, is kind of what I get from people.
Um, say
Unless you
that again.
share booths or what. It just seems like any way you slice it, it's going to be 10 grand, unless you're like sharing
Yeah,
booths.
Yeah, it is. I mean, you got to get out there, and you got to ship your stuff there, which is really difficult. They don't make it easy for you. And the one in Nashville is much easier. So if there's some sort of startup companies out there that are listening, and they're thinking about doing a NAM, I would really recommend doing the summer NAM in Nashville first. It's just much more. It's a third of the price. Partly for us because we can drive there, but
Yeah.
it's much cheaper, and it's more manageable, and it would be like a good way to sort of get your feet wet. We didn't do that. Our first time we went, to LA, and we were completely overwhelmed. But we did well. We got a lot, and that's where we've gotten all of our international dealers. We have maybe, I don't know, 10 or 12. I should know exactly, somewhere around that, international dealers, and they've all come from NAM. From Winter NAM in LA. So it's been it's been great.
Very cool. Very cool. So, how many NAMs have you been to at this point?
I think we've been to 3 winters, and last year was our first summer NAM, and we're going again this year. But we actually, in some ways, liked the summer NAM better, because it's so much more manageable, and it's got to be 1/50th of the size, and so you can actually go and see all the booths. And um, plus, Nashville is really, really kind of our best place in the world for our products. Somehow the country guys have really taken a liking to our amps, and so we have all these artists down in Nashville, these country artists that play our stuff, mostly studio musicians. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's a chance for us to get met up, to meet up with all these different artists, and kind of see everybody, um, over one weekend, and so Nashville's been very good to us.
Very cool. So let's see. You were talking about something today that was pretty interesting. You're taking a scanner to Apple. Is that right?
Oh, yeah. On Tuesday, yeah, they ordered one to use in their sound production lab. They have a whole bunch of them, but one of the labs, and they make sounds for apps and ringtones and anything that needs a sound. And so these studios, I haven't been there yet. I'm going next week, but these studios have a whole production suite and all different instruments and synths and everything, anything a recording studio would have. And so yeah, one of the people in charge of one of the labs there said, "Hey, we'd like to get one." And we said, "Okay, can we deliver it?" and
Right.
and get a tour, and they said yes. So um, I'm going to use it as an excuse to go visit a couple of other dealers out there that we've been working on, and so I'll get to drop it off there, and then go visit a couple of dealers in the Bay Area, and then come back. So it'll be a 2-day trip to the West Coast. So my
All
big
right.
vacation. Woohoo!
That's cool though. When you kind of, I didn't even think about that place existing.
Mm-hmm.
That they would have a facility like that, but I mean, of course they do, and I bet that would be a really fun job to work there.
Yeah, I can only imagine. I I'm really interested in getting to see the place a little bit, and um, everybody knows that company, and so many of us have their products. It'll just be kind of fun to actually like go inside and see what it's like.
For
So
sure, for sure. Did you do a special look to it? Does it have like an Apple theme of some sort, or did you just
you know
do
we
what you do?
we made it white,
Mm-hmm.
and we definitely added some special features to it. We added LEDs that light up the plexiglass. We figured out if you run an LED and it sort of the plexiglass sort of bends the light and it makes
Mm-hmm.
the whole thing glow. So we have these beautiful like purple and red LEDs that you can like they're not gaudy and flashing. It's just like you can turn it on and backlight the whole thing, and
Right.
you can switch between two colors. Then we did some engraving on we had the plexiglass engraved with some stuff, and it's definitely will be the fanciest one we've made, But
Nice.
yeah, so
Well, you got to get a picture of that and post it up so I can take a look
yeah,
at it.
absolutely. Well, it'll be on our Instagram and Facebook page and our website and stuff. Um, before it we'll get some good pictures of it, and we're using this particular scanner as a chance to develop some things that we've been wanting to, like these LEDs, and a lot
Mm-hmm.
of times, we do a lot of custom projects for people, and that's sort of, we always try to think of it as like a paid prototype, in the sense that, somebody's paying you to do it, and it's helping defray the costs of the engineering that goes into figuring out some of these things, and you
Right.
almost always break even or lose money on these custom one-off projects, or I shouldn't say always, but often, because you're solving problems as you build them, but it's kind of hard to explain, but it's if we anytime we do something special like that, if we break even, it's a great success because we've now learned how to do it, and then we can incorporate that into any future models that we produce like that, and
Right.
and we've figured it out. So
Yeah, that makes
um,
sense.
yeah, but developing a product is just so much more work than I ever would have thought. There's so many things that go into it. And, I think a lot of people just assume that boutique amp companies are just, their prices are so high and they're just gouging people and all this. I don't, I can tell you it's not true for us. And I doubt it's true for most of the others. I mean, if you're hand building amps, it's just going to take a lot of time, and and it's not a robot making them. It's a person sitting down wiring them all up, and so they're just always going to be more expensive. But when you design a product, you have to try to make it so that that it stands out because there's so much competition, but that it's truly a remarkable product. And
Right.
and I don't like to have our stuff be too expensive because I want to be able, guys like me, to be able to afford our gear. Like um, not just the famous artists, not just the lawyer musicians. And that's a term we use around here for, people that have had a good career as a lawyer or a doctor or something. They've made their money and now they can afford to have some cool gear. Um,
Right. Like the
but I
rock
like,
doctors and the blues
yeah,
lawyers. Yeah.
exactly,
Mm-hmm.
exactly. And I also want the guys who are, up and coming, in up and coming bands or garage bands or people just playing in their basement. Like, I want them to at least be as affordable as possible to those people. And you never can compete with the mass produced stuff, but we try to be as reasonable as we can with our prices and still survive. So
Right.
it's hard to it's a hard balancing act, but you know
Yeah, because it does take so much time and effort. It's like you don't want to do that for free, but
yep,
at the same time, you don't want to rip people off either. So,
right.
yeah, pricing is something I've talked about with a lot of people, and it's kind of like people don't realize how difficult setting a price on something can be because it's just like, oh yeah, I want it to be, I got to make money on it, but I don't want to rip people off. It's just,
Well,
and you want people to want to buy it and not go,
yep.
oh, that's overpriced. But
Well,
it's
and
really tough.
you can get yourself into a lot of trouble by underpricing because I mean, and this has happened to us with some of our products where, you know, you if you say, okay, I can build this amp in 15 hours, and I'm paying this guy X dollars to make it, so
Mm,
and you try to figure this out. There's always so much more that goes into it. Like, you still have to pay for your electricity and your insurance for the building. You have
mm-hmm.
your workman's comp insurance. You have all these different things that are you have to add in. And I think when we were first making our Sarge amplifier, I think they were selling for $7.99 in
Mm-hmm.
the stores, and
Wow.
that was probably fine because we sold quite a few of them. But it didn't take very long to realize that we were making just about zip on that,
Mm-hmm.
and so we've had to bump them up. I think um, now they are. I should know all of our prices by heart. Now they sell for $11.99. So they've gone up a lot, but they just had to. We just couldn't survive. Without it. And the price increase has. It's. I think people have been pretty understanding. They know
Yeah.
we're trying to be reasonable, and our stuff is still quite a bit cheaper than a lot of boutique manufacturers, and I think partly because sometimes where we're located is not particularly expensive place. It's not like we're in New York City with
Right.
crazy rents and all this stuff, or San Francisco or something. We're in Champaign, Illinois, so we have an affordable place to have our building, and the cost of living here is pretty reasonable. So that really helps us keep our costs pretty reasonable.
Of course. Of course. Yeah, and going back to the pricing thing too is like it's what you mentioned. It's you can price too low and it be very detrimental. Sometimes that affects. This is kind of getting more into like marketing stuff, but sometimes that affects people's perception of the product too. If you're used
Oh
to
yeah.
for like a boutique pedal, for example, and if you're used to it costing $200 and you see one for 130 and you're like, well, why is that thing 130? Is it not as
Yep.
good? You know?
Yep. Oh yeah.
And it might be just fine, but it's a weird perception thing where people get locked into things
Yep.
costing a certain price point, mentally, even if you don't realize that you do. So,
Yeah, it's absolutely true, and I don't even like to think about that part of it because it you can just chase yourself around in circles forever. And so we just try to put our stuff at a fair price that and we can survive and call it a day.
mm-hmm.
And if our, and when it comes down to it, if our stuff is good enough, it'll sell. And if it's not good enough, people won't buy it,
Right.
and there's always more to it than that. You got to market it properly and you got to this and you got to that. But really, ultimately, if it's kind of like a band. Like if you don't have good songs or if you're not tight, like no amount of marketing is really going to it can take you only so far. Ultimately, you have to be able to, produce a quality product, and that part we're quite good at, in the sense that, you know, we really know how to make something durable that sounds really good and, is of a reasonable cost to people. But, where our weakness is the marketing, because I'm not a marketing guy. I just want to build awesome stuff and just let the world figure it out from there. But it doesn't work that way. We have done no marketing at all other than having a Facebook page, and we've got 25 dealers, and that's great. But we're kind of at this point now where we need to kind of go to the next level. And I don't mean that we're going to try to be a huge company. I just mean that we are having to professionalize ourselves in some
mm-hmm.
ways, just to be organized as a business and keep our dealers happy. So we actually just hired our first marketing whiz, this young woman who's 25, and she's doing all of our artist relations and our marketing, and it's great to see what she's been able to do already. It's just getting the word out, getting the right word out, conveying to the world, who we are. And it's not even like we're doing magazine ads and stuff. It's just like Instagram and Facebook, but just trying to
Mm-hmm.
have a more consistent message and try to keep up with our artists and make sure that they feel like they're that we're taking care of them and that they're important to us, and that sort of thing. So
Yeah. I mean, really what the marketing aspect is all about is letting people know you exist, letting them know who you are as a company and what you stand for, and then they'll decide,
yep.
but you have to be in front of people, otherwise they don't even know you're there.
Yeah,
That's the problem.
that's the problem. We've always relied on our dealers to do that for us. We're like, well, we'll just let the dealers, like, they'll be the face of the company, and that's worked so far, at least to a certain extent. But you have to. We've learned that we need to support our dealers by making sure that we're doing our part, from a
Mm-hmm.
marketing perspective. And you get some super dealers, like Chicago Music Exchange
Well, yeah.
and Humbucker. Those are two of our dealers, and they do a really really good job of helping to market our product. But you know not all of our dealers have that kind of a marketing budget. So we need to make sure that we're supporting, some of our best dealers, our little moms and pop shops, and we need to make sure we're doing good marketing just, to support them. So,
Right. Yeah. That's a subject I could kind of get nerd out on, because like a lot of what I do is based around trying to get people to listen to the show. Well,
sure.
people have to know it exists in order to listen to the show, so that's a big aspect of what I do. And I think to some people it can be kind of a dirty word to a degree, but really, if it's done properly, it's actually a very good and enjoyable thing for everybody
Yeah,
involved, including the people being
absolutely.
marketed to.
Yeah.
Because they get something, they either get to purchase something or get to interact with something that they actually want to,
Yeah.
interact with. So,
Well, and especially, in the music business, we're not selling microwave ovens. We're not selling a commodity that people don't really care about. We're not selling, just pick anything that you kind of have to have. Deodorant.
Right.
Nobody gets excited about buying deodorant. I mean, it's important. We all need it, but it's not something that people are really passionate about. But, the
No.
music business, that's all it is passion, and so really it's got to be this woman that works for us. She just loves it here because she's getting to market to people who already like our product. She's not having to really convince them like, our toothpaste is better because it has, whatever. It's just she can be so much more subtle. It's not really about telling people buy, buy, buy. It's just about saying, hey, this is what we do and this is why we do it. And, if people like it enough and it's good enough, they'll buy it. And if not, well, then that tells us something too. So,
Right. Exactly. Exactly. So, you got the scanner and you got, a couple different models of amps.
hmm
Um, are there any other products in the pipeline that you are all jazzed up about or can
yeah.
reveal or
Well, the thing about new products is that I never have a shortage, or I shouldn't just say I. We as a company,
Mhm.
and there's I always lose track of how many people we have, 7 or 8, um, right around there. We as a company never have a shortage um, of ideas for new products, and the problem is figuring out how to finance the R&D to
right.
bring them into fruition. If suddenly, I had some super investor and they gave me, some big wad of cash and said, go develop a bunch of products. I mean, I got a 3-ring binder full of cool stuff to build. It's
Right.
just a matter of picking the right ones and doing it in a way that, you can finance it, sort of internally from existing product sales, and that's tough to do. But with that being said, we will be unveiling a combo amp at Summer NAMM. We unveiled sort of one last Winter NAMM. It was just sort of like a test, just to kind of see what people thought of it.
Was that the
Um,
one you were standing outside the airport with?
Yes, yes. It's made out of road signs. It's a really cool little single 12, 15-watt amp, made out of, because we have a whole road sign thing that we do called our road amp. And it's
Yeah.
literally, we take old road signs and we use a sheet metal shear and a brake, a press brake, which is how you
Mhm.
bend sheet metal. And we bend them into these enclosures, and they're just really neat because it's, these road signs are super tough and strong, and they make just really funky enclosures for amps. So we have this head that we've been making for a few years called the road amp, and so we decided to make it into a combo. So we made the whole case of the combo amp out of a road sign, and so it was kind of just a test, and we're still tweaking with that, trying to get it to sound right because of an all metal enclosure is a little bit of a challenge,
Right.
and so we as we refine that one, we are going to have a amp. It's the prototype's all done. Sounds uh, even better than we were hoping. So it'll be a 30-watt amp, single 12 in a wooden enclosure.
Sweet.
So we'll have that. We're working on a stereo scanner. Um, so we're thinking of calling it the Super Scanner. We haven't quite decided yet. That is really going to be cool, because we've taken 2 scanners and plugged, a guitar, into, like a little splitter, and then gone into 2 scanners, into 2 amps, into 2 speaker cabinets,
Yeah.
and it is the trippiest sound. Like you're almost dizzy listening to it, and especially you start putting a delay, like a ping pong delay, into these
Yes.
stereo vibrato. It is the thickest, richest, most badass sound, and I've only played it like that a few times, and I was like, we got to figure out how to make this in one enclosure, and it's pretty tough. It's probably going to be another year before that's done, but I think we know how to do it. Um, And so, but there's always, if you think it's going to take you 100 hours, you might as well, budget 300 hours, because
Right.
there's always these little engineering things that come into effect that you just, you didn't realize you're going to have this one oscillation or this kind of noise, or, whatever the issue is. It's a lot harder than I ever thought to develop a new product. So,
Right. Yeah, that's for sure. Let's see here. We're getting close to the end. Let's do a couple. Let's just do one more, and it's a question that if you haven't listened to the show, Ben, which I don't think you have, this may catch you off guard a little bit, but the listeners will understand. And
got it.
I've asked this question to I don't ask it to everybody, but I've asked it many times. And to some very notable people in the gear industry, I should add. But so here you go. Ben, what kind of pizza do you like?
Ha! Oh, I love it. That is a great question. Well, I have kids. I have a 7 and a 10-year-old, and so there's a fair amount of pizza that comes through our house,
Right.
and we battle back and forth because they want Papa John's. They just like this, crappy. No offense to Mr. Papa John if he's listening, but they just like the sort of mass marketed fast food grade pizza, which I
Yeah,
can't
yeah.
stand.
Of
I like.
course.
We have a little local place called Manzella's, a little Italian restaurant, family owned, and they just make the best thin crust pizza with lots of oregano on it. And as far as ingredients, it's pretty hard to beat sausage and mushroom or just pepperoni. Um, so, but I pretty much eat any kind of pizza that's made well.
Right. Yeah, I tend to lean towards the thin crust, like wood fired Italian styles myself. That
Yeah,
if I had to pick one, that would be where I would go. So I'm with you on that.
cool.
Yeah, the Papa Johns, well, they'll grow up. It'll be fine.
Sure.
Your kids will be fine. Don't worry about it.
Well, let me say to your listeners, if anybody wants to come visit us at Summer NAMM, please come visit our booth. We're very friendly people. At least we like to think we're very friendly, and we love meeting customers or just other gear enthusiasts. So please come by and say hi if you're there. Usually, Summer NAMM is open to the public one of the days. So.
Right. Oh, here I thought you were going to ask the listeners to come bring you pizza if you. That's
Well,
where
they
I
can
thought you
do
were going
that
with
too. They can do that too. And yeah.
Right on. Well, yeah, we are pretty much at the end here. So why don't you go ahead and plug where everyone can find you on the interwebs?
On the interwebs.
Mm-hmm.
Analogoutfitters.com. You can find us. And we have a Facebook page and Instagram and all that stuff. I don't even know what our Instagram page is because I'm sort of not a super techie, but my marketing person has it up and running. And so
When
anyway,
I announce it on Instagram, you'll be tagged, so people will see
great.
that.
Okay, good. So all the technology I specialize in is vacuum tubes and op amps. So I don't do a lot of computer processing. So
Well, those are
little,
cooler anyway.
yeah. So anyways, but yeah, they can find us. Check us out at our website, and we love hearing from people. Feel free to call the shop, or send us an email. And it's always fun to interact with our customers. It's one of our highlights.
Right on. Well, that's great. So I'll put the link to that in the show notes, everybody, so you can click over to their website and check it out. And yeah, good times.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
Yes. All right. For Ben, I'm Blake, and as usual, people, good luck and good tones. I was struggling to come up with something else to plug at the end of these episodes, so I decided this would be a good one for you to get a look behind the scenes, or a listen rather, of the just pure exciting stuff that comes along with running your own gear blog and podcast. So today, we're filtering through spam comments. Let's check this one. This one was left by I'm sure who is a super fan of the show, a man named Hair Removal Cream. And he has a nice long link here to his website, but we probably won't go in there today. It's just probably not going to fly with the time frame because there's a 77 possible spam comments to filter through here. So simply desire to say your article is as astonishing. The clarity on your put-up is simply nice, and I can assume you are knowledgeable in this subject. Fine, with your permission, allow me to grab your RSS feed to keep updated with coming near post. Thank you a million, and please keep up the rewarding work. So that's just some of the exciting behind-the-scenes stuff that you don't necessarily get to see. So, if you would like me to keep reading spam comments and throwing them in the garbage so you don't have to look at them, I would love an iTunes review, because iTunes reviews bring more people to the show, and therefore the show grows. Everyone benefits from that. So if you could leave an iTunes review, because there's several thousand of you who are listening who haven't left an iTunes review, that would be fantastic. So thank you very much for listening. Tell all your friends, and I'll talk to you next time.
One last thing before we totally sign off here, I just want to remind you that if you do any shopping at Stringjoy, that's Stringjoy guitar strings made in Nashville, that will help me out as well. As I've said for years, I'm heavily involved in that company, and I really do think they're making the best products on the market. So if you would like to try custom strings, go to tonemob.com/stringjoy and check them out today. I seriously love what the team down there is doing. I help them out with all kinds of things, and by you supporting them, you are also supporting me as well. And hey, you need some strings, so why not get some custom strings just for your guitar and playing style? Again, the link for that is tonemob.com/stringjoy, and that will take you right to their website, and you can do all your shopping through there, and that will help everyone involved out. So thank you very much. Talk to you next time. We are brought to you by the wonderful folks at Gun Street Wiring Shop. Yes, Gun Street Wiring Shop. I've talked about them before. I used to say based out of Bend, Oregon, but guess what? Sean moved to my neck of the woods. Sean's in Portland. Sean is awesome and has helped me with a bunch of stuff lately. And if you have wiring needs for your guitar, he can help you too. If you want to get weird with it, he can get weird. If you just need to spruce things up a little bit, there's your guy. He takes all the guesswork out of doing your guitar wiring, and he makes it simple, and his customer service is top-notch, and I can't say enough good things about Gun Street as a company. I really respect Sean and what he's all about, and the product is top-notch. I've got 3 different guitars that now have Gun Street harnesses in them, and I could not be happier. So go to gunstreetwiringshop.com and check them out.